was that if you were successful at everything you did, you weren't trying hard enough to build something great. So when he ran his business, Dean Clayman was his name, and he used to take his employees and run a contest. And the person who won the contest was the one that succeeded in failing the biggest. In other words, if you were doing something that was easy and you got almost there, but you didn't get there, but the guy who was really trying, you know, to figure out something that was way beyond anybody else's capacity, he was the winner. Because eventually, if you keep up with that, you'll invent something great. Well, essentially, that's kind of like my philosophy. Because these things that I passed around to you, they were something, when I joined the group, I joined the National Association, and I was just flipping through one of the monthly newsletters, and I ran across this thing called wedge assemblies, and I looked at that, and I said, wow, that's really neat, you know, look at that. I read the article, and it seemed pretty, you know, straightforward, but and I looked at it and I said, it doesn't really look that hard, you know? Well, the guy who, if you read this, the guy who figured this out, Robert Jersey Glaskowski Craig, was an aeronautical engineer, and he was great with mathematics, and he figured all these things out mathematically. Now, what he did was, you can either assemble your pieces radially, which is straight, pointed towards the center, or you can do them tangentially. Tangentially means that it's parallel, all right? The edges are parallel to a circumference, a center. You know, a different size wedge. These are all wedges that I've made for different purposes, and I'm going to show you that later, okay? But the next part of this is I made a jig to cut these things. And originally, you know, I'm cutting them, I'm doing this and doing it, and I found they were always off, just a little bit, just a little bit. Well, my grandchildren were visiting a couple of weeks ago from Chicago, 13, 11, and 7. Well, last summer I was talking to the 13-year-old and I said, you know, maybe you're getting ready to do something, maybe we'll figure something out. And he wasn't too excited about it. So this year I showed her this picture and I said, how would you like to make that? Okay, how would you like to put something like that together? And her eyes got big, round. And come to find out, she's going into the 8th grade. She's taking geometry next year. Well, guess what? This is geometric. You got to figure these things out. She said, it's like going to school already. So anyway, essentially, I watched her do a couple of things. I mean, I'm standing there. I was a shop teacher for 30 years, so I mean, I know how to teach kids how to do things, and not her. And you know, she was pushing the jig through, and it wasn't really coming out right. And then I made a little addition to it. I made the jig so that it would sit. This is the one she used, by the way, on top of the fence, all right, and be stable. Push things through. Now, this is the angle here. This angle here is 12 degrees. Okay. That's what this is cut at. 12, each one is cut at 12 degrees. There are 30 pieces in here. 12 times 30, 360. Okay, that works. And essentially, every one she cut perfect. These are the pieces that she cut them out of. All right, now this is a piece of maple, and it has a thin piece of cherry on each side, and then a piece of Peruvian walnut, about 1/8 of an inch, on each side, and then another piece of cherry. I just glued up a board with all those pieces on it, cut it to size and whatnot, all right? And put this on the jig. And basically, you just push that through. Makes the cut, flip it over, do the other side. So now you get two pieces out of it. What I'm learning, though, is centerpiece. I've got 1,000 little strips of the interior wood, maple or cherry, whatever I'm using. And my next step is to calculate how much I need to cut the two pieces out, and just the last cut will just be sawdust. So I'm going to trim the piece first, and then when I have a long piece of thin stuff that I can do something else with. Okay, that's the next step. But using something like this, right, it's easy. I'm talking about a 13-year-old girl, never used power equipment before in her life, and she made basically this. Now it wasn't this one, all right? She brought it home with her. That's, yeah, short brother. I had her sign it on the bottom, like I do, with the date on it. And when her mother looked at the name on it, she says, "Wait a minute, Papa didn't make this? You made it?" Had her name on it. So that was something, all right? But in order to cut these things at these degrees, this one here is 52 pieces in this one, 6.84 degrees. This one here is a little different, all right? It's got two different size pieces in it, and it has 40 pieces cut at 6 degrees, and 40 pieces, again, cut at 6 degrees, one smaller than the other. I'm sorry, cut at 3 degrees. 3 and 6 makes 9, 9 times 40, 360. It works. Okay? Now, that's just something, you know, that you come up with. You think about these things. How can I do it differently? How can I, instead of making it look like this where everything is balanced and equal, we do it like this. How about if we did some 3, some 6, some 9? We could do that. We could do it with 4 different dimensions. You know, you have to think. You have to try to figure out something that you've never done before and do it. And that's what I like about this. Okay. However, in order to do that, okay, in order to do that, you have to cut these pieces to the right angle. Now, what that means is the saw blade is parallel to the track, the mitre gauge track. Should be, right? I test it. I use a piece like this that fits in the track, okay? Fits in the track like that. And you push the, you know, you get the blade up to it, and you just run it along and, you don't have one. Not everybody. How many people have one? Okay. If you have one, you're in great shape. What happens if you don't have one? How do you do it? Well, what I do is I made a piece like this, piece of wood, that fits exactly into the fence. Square on the bottom, so you push it down flat. So it's hard pressed down to the bottom of the track, okay? And you use a combination square. Everybody's got one piece. So, put your combination square on there, push this up to it, but don't push it up against the fence. Get a feeler gauge, 2, 3, 4 thousand, something thin. So when you put this in there, put the feeler gauge in between. Then push the fence up, okay? And you can feel it, the tension here. Move the block along and test it over here. You can feel it if it's right. You can, if it's too loose, you're going to know right away. So then you have to make an adjustment in the fence. If your fence is not cutting parallel to the saw, guess what? None of these are going to come up. When you're cutting 3 degrees, right? If you're cutting 3.5, in reality, and you put 40 of them together, guess what? You're way off, okay? Got to be right. So that's the first thing you have to do when you're doing this. Check your saw, make sure it's right. Now, in the article that I passed out, they talk about doing it in a bandsaw, okay? And everyone that I've spoken to says, my bandsaw blade wobbles, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing. Well, I spoke to a gentleman, actually he called me because he saw a video that I have on the web, and he's actually doing the tangential wood display at the Quincy deposition there they're doing with the, the wood turning. And he's from California. His name is Bruce Berger. He has a bandsaw. It cost him $4,000. And the blade cuts absolutely perfect. You don't even have to sand the wood afterwards. I don't have a $4,000 blade. So I adapted this because I know I can do this. I'm going to work on the bandsaw and see if I can figure it out later. Okay? But I know I can do this because that's what I did. All right? So if you're concerned about all of this, right? I made these here. And they have the block, they have the stop, you can slide it back and forth. It has the place for the other side here where you put it up against your, you put it up against your fence, and you'll be able to attach this. Now, essentially, all right, what you have to do when you set this up, if you want one of these, they're going to be available tonight. Put this in, put the piece on the other side, and 2 clamps, cut it, and then screw it down. Okay? And it's going to run parallel to your fence. If your fence is a little rusty or put some wax on it, it's got to go smoothly. And it's got to be tight. If it's too loose, all right, what could you do? What happens if you put it on and it's too loose? What could you do? What kind of shimmy? Something big. Piece of paper, tape, black tape, something that'll make it run smooth and not wobble. All right? One of the things that I do when I cut mine, and it's just because of the way I work, I have a tendency, all right, to pull this way like that, to keep this in against the fence. Now, you can't lift it up, obviously, like I just did, but I found you cut one, and you can look at the front, the tip. If the pieces of wood that are being exposed here are all parallel to each other, or the one at the top is thinner than the one at the bottom, that means you're not cutting it straight. That means something's wrong, all right? And you have to adjust this to make it right. Maybe your fence isn't 90 degrees to the table. Check that. Okay? Please?
How about the blade?
The blades, yeah, the blade's got to be perfect too. You got to have to check that. Right? You've got to make sure that everything is set up cutting straight. And if this is 90 and the blade is 90, all right, then the jig is off slightly somehow. All right? And you have to compensate for that. So don't cut 52 of them and then decide that you have to compensate for it. Cut one, look at it, and try to figure it out. I've already done that. I've already cut 52 and tried to figure it out. That's not the right way to do it.
What do you use, 10-inch blade?
Please?
10-inch blade?
10-inch blade.
What kind?
I use Woodworker 2, Forest, thin kerf, Freud is an excellent blade. I just like the thin kerf, because it takes less wood out of it. But the other thing, saw blade. If your saw blade has been on your saw for a little while, you have to clean it. You have to get the resin and the pitch off of it. Buy some saw blade cleaner. Absolutely essential. Clean your saw blade. Once a week. Clean it.
I use black thin.
Yeah, black thin has something to clean off the resin. It'll become sharp again. Guess what? It's sharp now because the resin that's baked onto it and melted onto it isn't interfering with the cut. So clean your blade. That's another thing you have to do. Okay? All right. So, we've gone through this. The next step that I'm going to work on with this is I'm going to make a jig that's adjustable. That's kind of all these things around, right? That's my next thought process, but that's another year down the road. Okay? These all worked out good. Now, when you cut them, you're going to end up with pieces, okay? Little triangles. Put them together, right? See how they fit. Go to Staples, buy the heaviest elastic that they have. I think it's a number 42, right? Get one, the biggest bag they have is 1 pound, right? And you put everything together with elastics. Now, in the assembly guide here that I passed out, because there are 30 more pages that go with that, and you can read the title on it, so if you belong to the AEW, you can just go on the website and get the rest of it. But they say put like 25 on the top, 25 on the bottom. I don't usually use that much. Once you use them and you put glue on them, guess what? They're not going to be any good anymore. So, you know, I use maybe 5 to 8 on the top and 5 to 8 on the bottom.
Why can't you use bands?
Please?
Metal bands.
Well, the metal bands is the final step, okay? Because this again is a trial process. How do you want it to look? All right. Now, I have one of these just to open it up, because you need to do that to get something in there. All right. Look at this. That's one of the cones that I have. This is another cone, different shape. Put it in. See the bottom? Fairly snug, all right? Everything's leaning over. That's different. This is an experimental process. How do you want it to look? What do you want it to look like? All right? What do you want it to do? Here's one that's another angle. I think it's a little smaller. Where is it? I made this one. Right, to be able to get inside of these things. Watch. I put this in here. Okay? Now, as soon as I take it out, ooh, look, it closes up. And there's only 2 elastics on it. So, I'll put this one in, and I'll put that one on top of it, and push it all the way through. That's how you get together without, you know, beating your brains out. Okay? This look is going to be totally different than this look, the smaller one. Okay? This particular one here uses a very small guide. It's about 2 inches at the top and 1 inch at the bottom. And I just push that down into that. But the idea is, if you're making 2 pieces, like this one and that one, you have to use the same angle, top and bottom. Okay? And you put them together. The next step, deciding how to put them together. Look at the way these things, they're all going around, all right? And from, you know, left to right, going around the circle, counterclockwise. Right? Well, on the inside, they're going clockwise. How's that? That's because the top is going to be one and the bottom is going to be another. Counterclockwise and clockwise. So, if the top here is counterclockwise, right? What's the bottom going to be? It's got to be the opposite, so that they're going to line up. Come down and wrap that way. Okay? Or you could have them go all the way around, like that. I chose to do it this way because that's the way they did it. Okay? Again, it's an experiment. You try. The more you try, the more you'll figure out, you know, what you really want to do. Okay? The other thing is the got to have an angle gauge. Got to have an angle gauge to figure this out. You're cutting 12 degrees. Well, how do you know it's 12 degrees? Okay? I think I showed you this last time. This is a Wexley digital angle finder. Right? When you put it down on the surface and turn it on, it'll tell you what that angle is in relation to the last time you set it to 0. Every one's going to be different. Right? So if you want to find out what the angle is of one of your pieces, how do you go about that? Essentially, I'll do it on one of these. If I lay this down, because the tables are too thick.
This one is.
Yeah, that one. If I lay this down on this surface here, okay, and I put this on it, like that, right? Like that. What is this angle? If I put the angle gauge, if I put the angle gauge on this, it should read 12 degrees or whatever it's called, 6.84. All right? This is an absolute necessity. You cut one and you check it. Again, it's got to be right. Each one of these is perfect. If it says it's 12 degrees, it's not 12.1 or 11 point, you know, whatever. It is 12 degrees. And again, you have to be perfect with that. All right? This is the only way to do it with an angle gauge.
Have you ever played around with how perfect is perfect? So 12, if it's supposed to be 12, 12.1 is too much. What
Yes.
about 12.05?
Okay.
You see what I mean?
That's why I brought this one.
Yeah.
Okay? This is 60 pieces or whatever it is. Okay? And that's one of the niceties about this particular design. There are 60 or whatever pieces in here. Take a look at that. Where's it open?
No. Oh, actually, yeah, there are a couple spots. Yeah.
On the inside. You see, it's open. It's got like a crack on the inside. Like that. Well, what that means is we have too many in there. In other words, all of these were cut slightly bigger than they were supposed to be. So the nice part about doing something like this is when you have when you have something like that open on the inside, take one out. In this case, if they're different colors, guess what? You take two out. In something like this, where it's one color with, you know, pieces glued on the edge, you only have to take one out at a time. But you're going to see, I'm going to take two out of here. And I brought this to show you that this can happen to anybody. And I've done this for a while, and we all make mistakes. I can push one out, and all these elastics. Two pieces, okay? How's it look now? Still open a little bit, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit, but less. They take another one out, okay? Until it fits. And guess what? It will fit. Now, again, too, the more you lean them over, the more accepting they are. The angles will blend together the more you lean them over. So that's the other part of the different diameters on the cones. Okay? So, again, you know, a lot of you have said, I haven't been able to try this yet, I'm waiting. Yeah, what the heck? This is poplar, by the way. Okay, it's the cheapest stuff I have, and I make prototypes out of something like this. I'm certainly not going to do this, all right, on my first shot. I'm always going to do something like this until everything is right. Okay. So then you end up with something like this, all right? Now, if you look at this, you're going to see how these angles all fit together. When you cut these pieces, all right, you're cutting one side of the board, all right? Just one side. So if you need 7-degree angle, 3.5 and 3.5, you can only cut one side and you've got that. But there's something you need to know about that. When you put them together with the cut side all facing the same direction. Because if you put the cut side, okay, facing the right, it's going to have a tendency to lean that way and lean to the right. If you flip them over, it's going to have a tendency to lean to the left. That's another thing you have to be aware of. If you mix them up, one to the right, one to the left, half to the right, half to the, it's not going to balance. It's not going to keep out. So once you cut them, make sure you put them together in that sequence. All right. This one here, I made it, and I wasn't too crazy about it. I think what I'm going to end up doing is cutting it shorter and make a smaller one. All right. For whatever reason, I don't know. But I've thought about that. Now, the other big thing, everybody tells me, how, God's name, do you glue these things up? So, you know, how can we do it so that it all comes together and the glue doesn't start to dry? Well, what we're going to do here is glue this one up. I'll show you how it works. Right? So, take the elastics off, okay, and we take them out. I'm going to put the cut side up, right?
You don't have to sand that cut side or anything?
No, I don't. This is cut. It's fairly smooth.
Amanda, you taking all this in?
Take everything.
Is this one?
Still got there.
I bought this piece of cardboard because I knew Susan would yell at me if I got glue on the table. I'm only kidding, Sue.
Actually,
All right. And what I have here, little sticks. I'm going to put these little sticks underneath each piece so that they're fairly level. Because when I put the glue on, it's going to run downhill. Well, I don't want to have to race this here. So, I'm putting it on so that I have a little time. Normally what I would do is I would lay the sticks out ahead of time, because I know I'm going to do it, but say I wanted it to be a surprise. And it's nicer, actually, if you have long sticks. Well, I don't. The other thing is, don't mess up the sequence. Okay? Make sure you don't put 2 walnuts together, you know, or 2 maples. Because if you go and put it together fast, all right, you're going to end up throwing it away. So make sure you don't change the sequence of it, all right? That's why you lay them all out. Make sure that this one goes with that one. You line it up. We're all set, okay? All right. Next thing, rubber gloves. If you don't have rubber gloves when you're doing this, you can kiss your fingernails goodbye. And you're going to have to wash your hands with Clorox bleach and whatnot to get it all off, because you're going to be doing this for about 10 minutes. This glue sets for that. And with your body temperature, it's going to set much faster. Use those gloves. Okay? Tight mount. This is tight mount glue, number 2, right? One of the things that I'm going to do is put more on than I really need, because I want it to move when I get it together. I don't want it to like stick and dry fast, all right? The other thing is, this is my spreader. It's a little roller, okay? Beats the brush easily. Okay, so here we go. The glue on. Glue momentum. Something stuck up there. Nope. Nope. Yep. They keep throwing off here. All right, I'm just laying it all on there, every one. This one here doesn't have too many. You know, if you had 60 pieces, I'd do half. Okay? Roller, pick it up. Nice thing about the roller is it keeps some of the glue on it and spreads it more equally, all right, than the brush, because the brush just kind of moves it around. All right? And if you have a spreader, like Susan just suggested, it's flat and it takes too much off. I want it to gob up on there. I want it to be a lot. It's all going to squeeze out in the long run, but if you have any defects, guess what? It's going to fill it. Almost half done.
same degree, just different diameters?
These are all the same.
No, those black wedges you have, they're
Oh,
all the
yeah.
same degree.
No, 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 no.
Okay, it's separate.
What I'll do is I'll put them together and stick one in there and see what looks good and measure the opening at the bottom and the top and then just make one to fit. I couldn't tell you what they are, to be honest, okay? Generally, I experiment with these to try to get the desired appearance that I want. And you can see even with the wedges, they're dripping right to the edges, even with the spaces. Okay. Done. Okay. Now, you gotta make sure you clean this. Okay. All right. Just start picking them up, put it together. And when you put them together, move them back and forth like this. So you kind of slide it around. Imagine trying to do this without gloves. Don't. Just do these and put them on after. Okay, that's that. Take my elastics, put them on. Now, I'd put one or two more on. Try it. Take the cone that I'm going to use and stick it on. Originally, I had it going to counterclockwise. So that means I've got it upside down. I want it to go counterclockwise or clockwise or whatever. See, I can change it just by flipping it. Okay? Just put the steel clamp on it. Okay. need a hammer. I don't have one with me here. You need to bang these in. Yep, that's fine, that's perfect. All right, you tap them together, and you'll see, because of the excess glue that I put on them, all right, it's going to start oozing out. Well, guess what? That's what we want. Now we know it's tight. The more I press this down, the tighter it's getting. You see the glue coming out of the bottom? All right? So, right about now, this glue is starting to set. All right?
What's on the wedge so the glue doesn't stick to the wedge?
What's this?
No, what's on the wedge?
The black stuff on.
Oh, it's tape.
Electrical tape.
Electrical tape. All right, whatever tape I have. You know, I put it on there. All right? Tear it off and put new stuff on when it gets too gummy.
How critical is the angle of the cone? Obviously, the beginning and ending diameter. How strict does that have to be?
Like I said, I've made a lot of experiments, and I've used different ones with different, you know, things to produce different effects. So this cone could be bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top. It's what you're trying to represent, like what you're trying to make.
So you just make a bunch and then go with what fits.
Yes, and
Make one and
I'll put it
try to-
together. I'll put it together, okay? And if it's not real tight at the bottom, if I can't get it tight, you've got to make another one bigger at the bottom. So I'll measure this at the top, and I'll measure this at the bottom, all right? And make another one for that, okay? Or drive this in more, all right? Take some off the top, okay? You can do it that way.
Alex, if you took a cone, for example, this one here,
Yeah.
and you say this is 1 inch and that's 2 inches,
Yeah.
how do you keep it so it's going to tape it?
I just make my fence tool guide at the angle that I want, and I'll just run it, you know, run across like that. I'll make an incision. I'll use the potting tool and make an incision on each end to get where I want to stop and end, and then just connect the points that way. This stuff sands pretty easily. This is popping. You know, you can sand it pretty quickly, or pretty easily.
Alex, how do you chunk these up, these pieces? How do you actually chunk them up to the lathe? You
These
put a
pieces,
bottom on it?
well, on something like this, all right, this piece here is going to stick out and be round. So I'm going to put that in a chunk. The bottom one, I'm going to put a sacrificial piece glued to it and put it on a faceplate. Okay?
Then you put your decorative piece on the bottom.
Yeah. And what I'll do is, all right, with the bottom one on the faceplate, let me take my gloves off. With the bottom one on the faceplate, all right, I'll put them together like this. And because this is big, I'll put a center, you know, use the center here, live center, and turn them together and sand them so they're perfect. All right? That's the easiest way to do it. All right? I cut the insides as minimal as possible until I get the outside right. And then I'll cut the insides. Because if the outside's not right, you know, this thing's got to fit. You know? So,
I'd like to see you turn one of those at one of the demonstrations.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. all right?
Alex, have you ever tried to use a band saw to cut a ring from the inside of one to get two?
You mean,
Instead of, because, you know,
yes,
similar
there's
to
a lot of
coring,
ways.
it seems
I
like
looked
you
at that
waste a lot of
coring
wood.
tool, you know that coring tool
Yeah.
that he showed us 2 meetings ago or whatever?
Yeah, from home.
Yeah, I thought about that, you know.
It's in, I don't think the coring that way would get in. It seems like you waste a lot of wood.
Yes, yeah, you do.
But to me, to be able to drill down with a bandsaw to cut a ring.
Yeah, but one of the problems is, okay, the assembly like this, all right. In the article, it shows you using a threaded shaft and 2 different diameter rings. Okay, you can slide it up and down to make the cone that you want. All right. I suppose that would be basically the same thing. If you look at this one here, this is 1.5 inches thick top and bottom. All right. I have another one that I don't think I brought, and it's a stave. In other words, it's cut with a different angle on the top and the bottom. And that one uses hardly any wood at all. But you need a calculator, Woodturner Pro or whatnot to be able to do it. How many people have a Woodturner Pro or something like that to do their turning?
I thought it was kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to just get like graph paper and draw something on a piece of graph paper.
Well, if you're doing something like this, okay, it's not that hard. But if you're making a stave,
Compound miters.
yes, compound miters and angles and whatnot.
The good part about it tells you exactly what you need for linear footage.
Right.
Instead of trying
See
to-
this here? This one here, all right? It's 36 pieces, all right? 10 degrees. I just tilted the saw blade to 10 degrees and cut a long strip to make these. Because it's thin, it's not big, all right? So you don't need a jig to do something like that. If you're making longer pieces, all right, higher pieces, and the walls are not going to be that fat, then you use a lot less wood. Making a deep curved bowl like this, it's much more difficult. Okay. Anything else?
Those columns you got, those staves or are those straight?
These here are all straight. They're all of them are straight. All of them are straight. No, no.
What size, that piece of wood that you laminated together?
Yes.
What, yes, what is the size, the thickness of the thing in the middle?
Well, you have to figure it out to the angle and the length of it. All right? So you can cut one, practice. Okay?
Okay.
And it will tell you how big is it going to be on the fatting. Right? Well, you just need 1/8 of an inch plus the thickness of the,
But using the jig you've got,
yes.
you're only gonna make one cut.
No, you make a right on this. You cut it this way, turn it over.
Oh, you flip it around and do it again the other way. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And that's why I said I want to calculate this so I can figure out just how much I need. Cut a scrap one, all right, the length that you want. It's going to tell you how thick it has to be at the fat end, all right? Add 1/4 of an inch to it. And that's how thick it's going to
Okay,
be.
like I said, most of the standard wood is 3/4 of an inch.
Well, this is an inch and a half.
Okay.
I mean, I buy my wood unsurfaced, and I'll plane it all. If you're using 3/4 of an inch, you're going to end up with shorter pieces. In other words, like this, they'll be shorter. The width of this piece right here is more than 3/4 of an inch. A lot more.
That jig I bought from you last time,
Yes,
I think it's 6.9.
6.84.
Okay. Can I use 3/4 inch cut on that?
Sure, it's just got to be shorter.
Instead of a 6-inch piece, Paul, it's probably going to be a 3-inch.
Oh, okay, all right.
If you cut one, cut a scrap,
The same length.
cut a scrap piece from the tip to wherever it cuts off.
Yeah.
And that's going to tell you how long it's capable of being.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you cut them higher than 3 inches?
Well, I've tried using the table saw to do it, and I haven't used this jig to do it. This jig cuts them just right. So if you're cutting 4 inches, I raise the blade 2, cut it. But see, then what you have to do is you have to turn the jig around and put the fence on the other side. Use this jig. You know what I mean? Yeah, another thing that I've also tried, I've cut them on the bandsaw, and they're rough. And I have a sander, drum sander, all right? And it's a Formax sander. I use 2 different grits. I have a 60 grit on the first one and a 120 on the second one, all right? So when I push it through, it rough sands it, then finish sands it. I'll make a platform, put the pieces on it, okay? So that it's going to sand perfect. I can make it 10 inches wide if I want to do that. It's a lot of work. That's possible. like I said, I am gonna fool with the bandsaw and try to get it better. See how that goes.
Yeah, I read that article, you see.
Oh, yeah.
Side weights on the other end, have to slide down the board.
Yeah,
Sounds pretty.
yeah. Like Timberwolf blades I've been using, are pretty good.
What?
Timberwolf,
Oh, yeah.
they're about $40 a piece, you know?
How many teeth per inch?
Say again?
How many teeth per inch?
Three or four. But the set on them, it cuts pretty smooth. It does cut pretty smooth. So, yeah, this is a learning experience for me too. So,
Do they have a planer blade for that?
please, that
A planer blade?
they might, you know. But like I said, I talked to this guy, Bruce Berger, and I'm going to talk with him more at that symposium and find out what kind of blade he uses. His machine is Italian, and it's like $3,000, so I'm not going to do that. I'll buy $3,000 blade. So. Okay, I have these here. These are jigs here. If anybody wants them, I can sell them to you tonight. 12 degrees, that's to cut anything with 12 degrees on it, but that's what this is. All right? 6.84 degrees and another 12 degrees. So I've got one 6.84, yeah, and 12s. So if anybody's interested in these, okay, they're $40. I'm going to give half the money to the club. All right, I need just to replace some of my supplies, so I'm going to take half. All right?
Thank you.
Any other questions?